Hey, it's Hugo here from Dystech, and on today's episode of Ask a Speechy, we have Carol Blumenstein and her daughter Alana with us. Carol struggled a lot when it came to learning how to read during her childhood. However, at the age of 13, she decided to learn computer science. Fast forward to her professional life, and she was a consultant to multi-billion-dollar businesses IT company in the US. Carol and her 5 children all have a learning disorder. That's why they've created this amazing organization called Kids Read to Kids by empowering parents with dyslexic children by providing them free resources. Now, the organization is spanning around 60 different countries, not only empowering parents but also teacher with free video and audiobook available for them at no cost. This is my conversation with Carol and Alana from Kids Read to Kids.
Carol and Alana, thank you so much for your time, and I'm really happy to have you here for Ask a Speechy episode 10. First, I'd like to ask you, how is life on your side?
It's busy, a little crazy, very crazy. Yeah, almost everyone's home. We're all trying to buckle down, stay safe. But it's been really busy because of COVID and teachers and schools and parents needing a lot of online materials. We've been really, really crazy busy trying to help out. So, but it's been fun.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. So maybe actually you can start by telling me a little bit about yourself, guys, and then maybe moving on to what you're actually doing, because I know what you're doing and it's quite amazing, and I thought you'd be best to actually explain to me what it is.
Well, thank you. I'm going to take a step back in terms of a little bit about me. Again, my name is Carol, and when I was growing up, way back when, the concept of dyslexia, ADHD, testing for learning challenges, it didn't really exist back then. You either did well in school or you didn't. And I had 2 older sisters that just flew through school. They seemed to just succeed in everything they did effortlessly. And then it came to me, and I struggled to read words. I couldn't spell. It was a really horrible feeling. And I remember my teachers just looking at me with such disappointment and disgust and thinking, oh, why couldn't you be just like your older sisters? And I remember my mother looking at me and saying, don't worry, we've got this. And she noticed I was very good in math, very good in science. I loved puzzles. And she came up with the idea of putting me into computer programming. So at 12 years old, she signed me up at a community college, and I started learning, C-based coding. And I was the youngest one in the class. Everyone else there was 18, 19, 20, and there was me. But there was something about the logic that I just understood. It spoke my language. And I remember coming back and finally feeling like, oh my gosh, there was something I could do, and I could do it really well. And that sort of energy kind of carried me through the rest of my life, because my mother kept reminding me, find things you love, figure out the ways that you learn it the best, and then just go for it. And jumping forward, I then have 5 kids of my own. And at this time, with such things as testing, I found out that they were dyslexic, ADHD, dysgraphia, severe anxiety. The understanding of the issues that they had, I understood, but the same concept of teachers frustrated with them, the feeling of just, I'm so stupid. Why is it so hard for me? Why can't I be like everybody else? The shame, that same element that I suffered from. And even when I went off to college and graduate school at some of the finest universities, that shame never left me. I always felt like I was a fraud, that there was basically something wrong with me. And I was seeing the same element of shame reoccurring with my children. And it was like, enough. It's time to change the narrative. And my kids sat around and started figuring out what could they do? How could they help other children, especially those that maybe don't have parents that understand what they're going through or are on their side? You know, a lot of parents might think that their kids really are lazy or not trying, you know, when in reality, their kids are probably trying 10 times harder than everybody else. So I'm going to throw it over to Alana, and she's going to talk a little bit about Kids Read to Kids.
Okay.
That was a very great intro. I'm Alana. I am 21. I'm a junior in college, and I am one of the co-founders, along with my family, of Kids Read to Kids. And Kids Read to Kids was actually started when I think I was like a sophomore in high school, which is kind of crazy looking back. It's been so many years now. But my younger brother, Jacob, he's 2 years younger than me, has severe dyslexia. And as my mom said, a lot of us were having the same self-esteem issues and the same struggles that she had had when she was a child. And so we were very, very lucky to be able to get the resources that we needed to succeed and to be able to learn on our own, even though we had a different learning style. And Jacob eventually learned to read and succeed, and he is an amazing student. He's actually studying business right now at the Ross School at University of Michigan. And when we were looking back in high school at our life and how lucky we were, we decided that we wanted to give back to other kids like us. So we started Kids Read to Kids, and at Kids Read to Kids, we read abridged classic novels. We tape them, we film them, and we have high schoolers. So kids who have experienced similar things to our audience, who are sharing their stories and who are reading abridged classic novels and sharing them with the world. And we really wanted to provide a safe space for kids who are growing up and struggling in school and who feel alone, and a lot of them think they're the only ones.
Right. The other nice thing is that when you visit Kids Read to Kids, you will notice that everything is done by kids for kids. The logo was done by my son Ruben when he was 10 years old. The editing, the filming, the writing, the photography, every element of this website, even the original music that Jacob wrote, it's all done by kids. Kids with learning challenges, kids who were told that they weren't smart, that they weren't creative, that they were never going to succeed in school or in life. And I think it's really important for every child to see that every child has amazing gifts inside of them. And if you just have that opportunity to feel safe and to explore their strengths, it's just incredible what can be created. And figured all of this out themselves. If they had to figure out how to edit, they figured out how to edit. If they needed to figure out how to design something on a website, they figured it out. And it was really amazing that you know, when they understood and something that they wanted to do and were given online resources, it was incredible how much they could learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's an amazing intro and story about how Kids to Read started. Now, I actually would like to segue a little bit. What I've got you, the mother and daughter. I'd like to ask you some of your experience. One as a parent and the other one as a student. So I'm dyslexic as well, so I went through the whole, you know, can't read, can't write, and had to figure it out, you know, throughout school. But like, so Carol, obviously your mother was very supportive of you, and you've highlighted how parent support is actually incredibly useful. And when this happened with your kid, how did you have some challenges with sort of like advocating for your kid with schools and teacher? Was that
I had everything. First of all, where I'm living in Michigan, I didn't grow up in Michigan. So I was raising my children in a world where I didn't have a lot of my own family or friends because I never really had lived here before I got married. So when I had my children, I found that a lot of people weren't talking about learning challenges. They viewed it as a disability, like something that is shameful or wrong. And even if somebody's child may have suffered from that, they wouldn't admit it. It was something no one wanted to talk about. And so when I was going through this, I found that I was very much alone, and I had to do the research and understanding and figuring out what to do. And at that time, my mother had already passed away. So I was kind of like, okay, I'd pretend and think of like, okay, what would my mother do? But that was really hard. I wish that I had other parents that were open and honest and willing to talk to me. But through this and working with my kids, I've switched kids to different schools. I've homeschooled my kids. I continuously are making changes, constantly working with teachers. And one of the things about Kids Read to Kids is we provide a lot of information. I try to provide a lot of information also to parents. The most important thing is, number one, as a parent, do not feel ashamed or embarrassed about your child's learning differences. There is no shame. They simply learn differently. And once you as a parent understand that and you don't feel shame, your child won't feel shame, because you're their mirror, and how you feel is going to immediately reflect how they feel about themselves. And if they don't feel good about themselves, they're not going to be set up to succeed in school. The second thing as a parent you've got to teach your child is, don't be afraid to ask for help. Help is really important. There's no shame in it. It's how we learn. And that's something that every child has to learn, to be able to go to their teacher if you need a tutor. And like Kids Read to Kids, they're mentors. Whatever it is, we need to teach children right away that they need to go and ask for help. That's really important. And don't wait till the last minute. The second you think you may not understand, go and ask for help. And then the third thing is to show parents and teachers that technology is critical. An audiobook, your brain doesn't remember if it learned it from an audiobook or a textbook. Believe it or not, your brain just doesn't know. It just learned. And so for a teacher or a parent to tell a child that an audiobook is cheating, no, it's not. If that's the best method for your child, then use it. Enjoy it, love it, incorporate it in their life, because we need to teach children how to be lifelong learners so that they can find resources. If in school they're not being given the right resource, we need to give them the skills so that they can go out with the internet and all of the incredible resources out there to get it how they need it, in the format that will help them learn. So that's very, very important. That's one of the elements of Kids Read to Kids, where we're really teaching children how to listen. Because you're born hearing, it's not the same thing as listening. And so when the kids created lesson plans and break up the books into finite small chapters with fun listening comprehension questions on the lesson plan and creative writing prompts, it's teaching young children, how do I listen? Because once they master that, they can go into the classroom, they can follow and pay attention to their teacher. They can go and listen to audiobooks. They have an incredible tool set to be able to succeed. My son Jacob, he's a slow reader. He's still a slow reader. He's 19 years old. But you know what? He's excelling at college because he uses audiobooks. He uses Bookshare. He uses Learning Ally. He uses everything he can. And it works for him. So no shame. Let your kids use everything and work with your teachers. But most important, start with it at home. Be proud of your kids. Understand they are working 10 times harder. And understand, be their advocate. Don't be afraid to go in and say, hey, my child needs help.
That's amazing. I really agree, and I actually really resonate with different medium of learning. So I learn by video, and like, you won't teach me anything if I just read something. So yeah, that's amazing, Carol. Thank you for that. Now I wanna ask you a question to you now, Alana. As a student, you're still in the education system. You're still full in, and so I want to ask you. So when I grew up, so I was diagnosed with dyslexia around 11, 12. And so nothing happened after this. I was not labeled. So at school, I was just a normal kid. I was just being diagnosed with dyslexia, but there were no label whatsoever throughout my education journey. And I want to ask you, how do you see being able to discuss about dyslexia at your school? How how easy it is to actually start this conversation with, educator, teacher, your friend. How do you feel about this? And did you see a change? Because you've been aware of this whole dyslexic thing for a while now, and I'm sure that you've seen many different, maybe one or two different schools by then. And so, what's your experience with this as a student? Being able to actually discuss about dyslexia and sort of like being comfortable with it. What's the feeling here?
I think it really depends on both the amount of time you've spent kind of living with. Just like knowing about learning disabilities, because we've been dealing with this for so long, and also at what kind of institution you're at. I know at my current school, partially because they're very open with accommodations, and partially because we've been running Kids Read Kids for such a long time, talking about learning disabilities is like second nature to me. But I know that when I was in elementary and middle and high school, it was not as open of an environment to talk about. And even if I know each one of my siblings have had various experiences of coming up to a teacher or talking to classmates and kind of discussing how they were feeling, like with their, whether it's dyslexia or ADHD or anxiety, and, feeling like they weren't really heard. And I've definitely felt that way in a school environment before. So yeah, I think it depends on how comfortable you are with your own learning disability and how open your school is to hearing you.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I've had, in the previous episode, we had a very successful entrepreneur. She has very successful businesses, and she's dyslexic, and sometimes she was emailing client, and she was doing spelling mistake, and she was thinking of maybe saying in her email signature that she was dyslexic, so that if people don't really understand, they can get back to her. So yeah, it's really interesting. The question of disclosing that you have dyslexia or not, and So what are you? So Kids Reach to Kids is an initiative that aim at empowering children who don't really have that support around them. Maybe their parents are not really aware, and then they can go to Kids Read to Kids and get a lot of resources. Same for parents, they can get resources about dyslexia and sort of do some activities to support their child. And so what's your goal? What do you want to achieve?
Well, it's interesting. I think one of the goals is that no one feel ashamed to admit if they are dyslexic or ADHD, autistic. In fact, wear with pride. I don't. Every learning challenge also comes with incredible strengths that come along with it. Amazing creativity, the ability to see things from all angles, compassion, empathy. So I hope that nobody in the future ever feels ashamed or wondered whether or not, should I keep this a secret? I think the most important thing is no. Don't keep it a secret, because it doesn't define you. When you keep it a secret like this, somehow you feel like it's something you should be ashamed of, or somehow it's defining who you are as a person. It's just one element. Color of my hair. It's not defining me. My color of my hair isn't me. It's just an element. And so I think that's very important. Also with Kids Read to Kids, it's really providing all of the resources. They're free. When you come on the website and you go to the YouTube channel, everything's free. And it's teaching children how to be independent learners. And it allows them to see up close and personal with other kids from all over the world, and teaching them how they have the ability to take charge of their education. And I think that's very important. When a child realizes, oh my gosh, I can succeed. And then Alana just launched the Kids Read to Kids magazine, where she interviews incredible kids who have done amazing things, and also adults. It kind of allows kids to see that their world is endless possibilities, that you can do anything you want. There is not a single learning challenge that is going to get in your way. as long as you have the determination and you're willing to look at some of the resources out there and incorporate some of the technology to help you succeed. There's really nothing that you can't do.
One of the things we're really passionate about is like raising awareness not only of the learning disability itself, but the gifts that each of them bring. I think a lot of kids don't know that when they're dyslexic, many dyslexics are also creative. They're big picture thinkers. There are so many dyslexic entrepreneurs for that reason. And I think if kids could see that there are so many other people like them, and not only that, but it comes with such gifts. And you may have to work harder in some areas, that's true. But if kids could see that and have those role models to look up to, I think it would open up their world to so many more possibilities.
Absolutely. And one of the best gifts I always laugh at my kids is because, you know, I struggle to read. I'm a really slow reader. Everything takes me 10 times longer when it comes to reading. I grew up with a really, really strong work ethic because I expected everything to be hard. I expected everything was a long time. And so therefore, when I got into engineering, when I got into my MBA, whatever my work came along, whatever projects that got thrown to me, I had this really strong work ethic. I just expected it was going to be hard. It was going to take a lot of effort. And I just buckled down and got to work. And all of my kids, because they initially struggled in school, they developed that same work ethic of understanding that anything good takes time and it takes effort and it doesn't just happen overnight. And when you have that work ethic, there's literally nothing, nothing that you cannot do. So I always say, in a weird way, it's really a gift. You start out hard and you don't know any differently. And that's actually a really great thing.
Yeah, that's very true. I actually tend to really agree with you. And, you know, it's like we've failed so many times. We've been rejected so many times. It's like another one is nothing, right? It's like we're just going to keep going. And yeah, and I can clearly see, like, you know, obviously I've met a lot of dyslexic people around the world, actually. And, yeah, I can clearly see how, like, we have this tenacity of just you know, being able to just keep doing stuff, and you know, regardless of if it works or if it doesn't work, we just keep doing it. Awesome. So I'd like to ask you a question to you both. So I'm going to start with you, Alana. So, in your opinion, if you could change one thing in society to better support dyslexic, what would that thing be?
I think I would like to see a lot more, not only empathy for others, especially in the classroom, but, you know, taking a chance before getting into whatever unit you're studying, taking a chance to kind of talk to people about how some people in the class are going to learn differently, and kind of taking a chance to explain to some of those kids that, you know, if someone takes longer, that's okay. If you learn differently, that's okay. And always making it clear that there is an open and safe space to talk to a teacher if something is wrong or something feels harder. I think that when kids spend so long in their heads kind of freaking out like, oh no, this isn't working, like it really sets them back. And I also think that if other kids knew more about learning disabilities, even especially kids, I think, that don't have learning disabilities, there'd be so much more empathy in a classroom, and it would just be a much safer space, and people would just feel safe to learn however they learn, and just to be who they are and to be proud of it.
Wow. What about you, Carol? What would be the one thing that you...
I love what Alana was saying. I remember I had my kids sign up to be mentors at, there's a place called Friendship Circle, and a lot of the children there have very severe physical disabilities. And I remember part of the training, they had the kids putting on these huge mittens and then saying, okay, now try buttoning your blouse or unzipping, and the kids couldn't do any of it. And they did it to try to get the kids into the shoes of the child they're then going to mentor. And I think that's really important, that I think we all need to understand and feel what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes, so that we have the empathy and the compassion to understand and see them as the person and not their disability. And secondly, in terms of school, I wish that the focus was on the content. In other words, I remember in English class, I would write this beautiful story and I would get back the grade, and it was a terrible grade because of all my grammar mistakes and all my spelling mistakes. And the story itself, the character, it didn't matter because my teacher was so focused on all of the things that I had done wrong that clearly, that could have been corrected. That wasn't my original content. And I really wish sometimes that teachers would understand that when a child is struggling with that, focus on the content. What is the child writing? Because that's really the intelligence. That's the intellect right there. Let's focus on the higher level, the reading comprehension. When you're doing a test, don't, ask what color was the bird, on the fifth night, in January. And the kid's like, what bird? Ask more of the in-depth questions. Try to really teach children how to learn and not so much of the regurgitation. I think that will really help all children because at the end of the day, we're trying to encourage creative thinking, really processing what you've learned and taking it to the next level versus just simply memorizing facts. I can look that up. I don't have to memorize it, I think that would really help a lot. And also making sure that all the resources are available for kids, parents, for adults. If it's out there, let's get it in everyone's hands and teach them how to use it. Because it makes things so much easier. If you have Otter where you can just speak into it and it takes your notes, believe it or not, for somebody who's ADHD who can't keep track of it, at least their thoughts get down. So things like that, if there's resources out there, let's get it in the hands of the people that need it.
Yeah, amazing. That's super cool. I agree with everything you guys said. So for the people who watch this, can you tell us where can people reach out to you? Where can they find you? Where can they connect with you?
Well, you can always find us on kidsreadtokids.com. With the number 2. And we are also on Facebook at Kids Read to Kids. And we're on YouTube at Kids Read to Kids. So all Kids Read to Kids everywhere.
And we're always looking to highlight kids. So if you want to share a story that you wrote for our magazine or a picture that you drew, send it to us. We love all that. We, just highlighted a little boy who loves to share. He films reading books with his mom, and we just highlighted him in our magazine. So that's the thing. We want to empower kids to show that everybody can be a leader. Everybody can inspire others just by being yourself and being proud of who you are. You can always reach out if there's parents that want to ask any questions or advice. Come and ask us. We're very transparent. We're very open. We're very honest. I try to really tell people everything because I wished I had somebody that I could have gone to. I know what it's like when you feel so desperately alone and you feel like, I don't know how to help my child. And I don't want any parent to feel that way. I don't want a teacher to think, how can I help this child? We're going to give them the resources. So whether it's a librarian, a teacher, a parent, a student, anyone, please come to us, ask us. We're here to help.
Wow. I think you guys are doing amazing work, and I think we need more of this in the world. I want to thank you so much for your time and being able to share a little bit of your personal story, but as well as explaining what Kids Read to Kids is all about, and hopefully we'll be able to share this with our community here in Australia, and hopefully spread the word about the work that you guys are doing, because it's really great to be able to see people wanting to support dyslexic the way you do is really unique. So well done.